Story 1. Taking each other for granted is not betrayal. It is death by neglect. Story 2. Disinterest. Not caring about others' bids for connection. Resentment, contempt, addiction, lack of empathy and narcissistic traits. Story 3. Inability to regulate emotions. Lack of self-awareness. Emotional immaturity. A wandering eye or flirtatious behavior. A toxic family environment. Inability to communicate. Story 4. Fiscal irresponsibility destroys partnerships. Nothing harms them faster than squandering the future. Story 5. Certain phrases you cannot take back. I wish I did not marry you. I wish you were more like my ex. You are a bad parent. I don't care about how you feel. I texted my mom and she says you are wrong. Now I understand why my ex called you this deeply hurtful thing. I don't care whether you stay or go. I don't find you attractive anymore. Story 6. Being put last behind your ex-wife's family and friends. Story 7. Being their last priority. A partner putting family and friends above you. Unspoken hurts. Moving too slowly for the other person. Lack of communication. Resentment. Addiction. Inconsideration. Selfishness. Laziness. Lying. Disrespect. Invalidation. Gaslighting. Low effort. Lack of curiosity. Hates talking on the phone. No real discussion about the future. Ask me how I know. Edited to add. He was avoidant and I was very anxious. I am not even sure he liked me. I think he may have just liked my attention, validation, and care. Story 8. Poor communication can harm relationships. I have a wonderful relationship with my wife because we communicate our needs to each other properly. Story 9. If you cannot work on yourself without others' constant support, aim to be self-sufficient to some degree. You should want to fix things yourself rather than letting others do it for you. Support is fine, but if you rely on it constantly and do not acknowledge and work on your issues, it will not work very well. This is my experience. Story 10. Emotional imbalance in a relationship occurs when one partner is more invested in being together than the other. It is a subcategory of mismatched expectations. Story 11. Not listening to your partner, constantly undermining or belittling them, failing to help around the house, and showing no interest in plans made for you. I could go on. Story 12. A lack of consideration for how your actions and words affect your partner's feelings. Story 13. Not making time for each other. If it is like pulling teeth to get them to even acknowledge you, it is dead. Story 14. When one person stops caring or paying attention, failing to listen, showing no appreciation, or making the other person feel unimportant, it slowly kills the connection even if no one else is involved. Story 15. Lying, whether about the smallest matter or something larger, causes you to stop trusting anything they say. Story 16. Turning every argument into a breakup threat is not cheating, but repeatedly threatening to leave destroys safety and trust just as quickly. Story 17. Apathy. Expecting people to stay no matter what. Story 18. Focusing on good looks and having fun while expecting the other person to do everything else. Story 19. Poor communication. I know two couples who are perfect for each other, but they do not know how to argue like adults. They very rarely argue, but when they do, it's explosive. Story 20. Lack of communication. When one person stops sharing their thoughts or feelings, distance grows without anyone realizing. You can be physically present but emotionally gone, and that slowly kills the connection without anyone ever cheating. Story 21. Lack of effort occurs when people get comfortable and stop showing their partner that they still want them. They stop making plans, being spontaneously romantic, and trying to get to know their partner on a deeper level. Story 22. Wandering eyes. Disrespect. Emotional detachment or disregard. Not spending quality time. Disengagement. No concern, or being unbothered. Lack of mature communication. Dishonesty. Giving or showing no effort. Lack of interest. Lack of intimacy. I could continue. Story 23. Unreliability is actually worse and more damaging to a relationship than cheating. Story 24. Do not air disagreements or argue in public. Present a united front and address disagreements privately. Avoid trying to change one another. Be understanding and accepting. Failing to take time between relationships to discover and be yourself as an individual with your own life and identity is a mistake. Do not focus on others and their relationships instead of taking care of your own. Avoid unrealistic expectations. Basic consideration and mutual respect. Do not do things to others that you would not want done to you. This is a never-ending topic. Story 25. Engaging in dishonest behavior has consequences. If you act dishonestly, people will expect dishonesty from you even when you are not. They will doubt your honesty, question your motives, and view your words and actions with suspicion. People grow accustomed to dishonest behavior and will continue to respond that way regardless of your later honesty. That is why you should avoid dishonest actions. Story 26. I had a psychotic breakdown and was kicked out. I have since recovered and have been sober for 2 years after experiencing years of homelessness. Story 27. Lashing out in anger, such as punching a wall or throwing things, is harmful. Ignoring your partner and actively avoiding their touch, such as shoving hands away or refusing to be affectionate, is hurtful. Leaving the toilet seat up or leaving mess around your place is inconsiderate. Even if you do not live together, it is a turn-off to see unhygienic habits. Disrespecting your partner in front of family or friends, such as sharing intimate details or making fun of them, is embarrassing not only for your partner but for you as well. Discouraging your partner about something they are passionate about, or not putting the same amount of effort into the relationship, damages the relationship. Story 28. Never arguing. If you have been together for a long time and built a life with someone but have never had a single argument, that is not healthy because it means you are not communicating. You cannot realistically go through life with another person without ever disagreeing, feeling angry with them, or feeling hurt by them. If you do not voice your feelings, set boundaries, or work together as partners through hardships, it will create a miserable environment and eventually destroy the relationship. Story 29. Constant teasing, sarcasm, leering, eye-rolling, and derogatory jokes, both privately and in front of friends. This is not a fight. It is an attack on your partner's self-esteem. You stop feeling respected by your closest loved ones. Story 30. Not being on the same page about where the relationship is going. Story 31. Being overbearing means one partner prioritizes their own needs and desires over their partner and makes decisions that affect both people without checking in first. I used to wonder when it would be my turn to make decisions in the relationship. Took me a few years to realize the answer was never. Story 32. Chronic illnesses that are out of control. My last relationship was destroyed by attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and depression. My ex had only started seeing a therapist a few months before I broke up with him. I could not take care of him anymore and suffered from emotional burnout. Story 33. Poor communication and a lack of interest leave the other person thinking that you have switched off from the relationship and wondering if something has changed, which can quickly spiral into bigger issues. You do not have to put them on a pedestal, but at least make them feel valued. Do not treat them worse than you would another person. Not respecting boundaries is also an issue. Story 34. Lying is worse than cheating in my book. Not only do they try to fool you, but they also assume you are stupid. Story 35. As others said, neglect, lack of empathy, and emotional disconnection. If my partner had been cheating, I would not feel as bad. I feel like not being interesting or important enough is worse than my partner being attracted to someone else. But when a partner does not seem attracted to you at all and does not want to spend time with you, the pain is so deep. Story 36. If your partner does not feel happy for you when you achieve something and puts you down for it, that is a warning sign. If a stranger, friend, or family member recognizes your accomplishment while your partner minimizes it by saying it is not that impressive or that anyone else could have done the same, you are with someone who will be a nightmare long-term. Story 37. When Yoda lives in the guest house, he's not chill at all. He'll steal all your food and then speak like Yoda if you ask about it. Food you had? See it, I did not. It's obvious you did, you just used some Jedi trick to move it to the guest house. This will destroy a relationship. You cannot let Yoda come between you and your partner. It doesn't matter if he's one of the only Jedi left. He has to earn his own way like everyone else. He also doesn't shower. Story 38. Expecting your partner to act like a parent is unreasonable. I have dated men who did not want a girlfriend. They wanted a mother. Story 39. Withholding intimacy and using sex as a weapon are forms of emotional abuse. Story 40. Emotional neglect occurs when one partner stops showing interest or listening, or makes the other person feel unseen or unimportant. A relationship can wither from this silent neglect rather than from open conflict. Story 41. No longer listening to or caring about what the other person is saying and neglecting the little things. Story 42. Envy, jealousy, resentment, disillusionment, and disrespect can define or destroy relationships. Sexual infidelity is a symptom of a larger relationship problem. When sex becomes more about your own comfort and pleasure than about the pleasure your partner is experiencing, it is not making love. The goal of physically expressing love and desire for another person is raw emotion that affects you on a basic level. Emotional infidelity is just as harmful. Sharing deep-down feelings and insecurities with someone you are not in love with, because you cannot share those feelings with the one you love, challenges the basis of the relationship. Trust is being honest with yourself and your life partner without fear of losing them. If you cannot always want the best for your life partner, then are they really your life partner? If you are not your spouse's biggest champion, if you are not connected to them on an almost cellular level, sharing pain, pleasure, comfort, compassion, mutual understanding, and appreciation, then is it really love? I used to question that with my parents. Story 43. Quietly building up resentment because I am afraid of difficult conversations. Story 44. Slowly erasing someone's confidence over a period of time to convince them that nobody else will love them but the abuser, telling them they are broken and damaged. Mentally, emotionally, and physically abusing someone you claim to love is not love. It is hard to see when you are in it because of the trauma bond, but once I got distance, I could see how he manipulated me over a long period and projected his own issues onto me. Death by 1,000 cuts. Story 45. Not spending quality time together, not prioritizing your partner, changing your behavior or showing a lack of effort once the relationship is established, a lack of communication, and being unable to talk with your partner about both big and small matters. Story 46. Alcohol or drug addiction will destroy a relationship just as much as cheating. Story 47. If you hyperfocus like I do, you can forget your partner's existence, which leads to neglect and disconnection. Do not do this. Set timers for hyperfocus periods and keep your priorities in check. Story 48. I have seen disinterest, lack of respect, and lack of communication destroy relationships and marriages. Story 49. Being disrespectful during an argument can leave small cracks that cannot be repaired and may eventually break down the entire relationship, even after the argument is over. Story 50. Lack of trust, privacy, respect, communication, responsibility, empathy and understanding, neglect, selfishness, and arrogance. Story 51. In every relationship, whether romantic, friendly, professional, between coworkers or among neighbors, nearly all problems stem from poor communication. Sometimes personalities do not get along, but if people communicate honestly and in good faith, most relationships can become positive. Story 52. A lack of honest communication leads to misunderstanding and emotional detachment. A lack of respect and taking a partner for granted erodes a relationship. Story 53. Not communicating with each other is the best way to kill a relationship. Story 54. Lack of effort slowly kills the connection even if no one cheats. Story 55. I could not have actual conversations. During the last year of my previous relationship, the only thing my ex would talk about was a YouTube video he watched that day. If he had been watching educational videos and sharing an interesting fact, that could have led to a stimulating conversation, but he watched Mr. Beast style videos. It was mind-numbing and isolating, and I came to prefer that he not talk to me at all. He needed to learn conversation skills. It does not always have to be a deep existential topic, but there are far more interesting things in the world than something you saw a random person do for views on the internet. Story 56. Not making an effort to maintain a sexual relationship when at least one partner wants it. Story 57. Frequently disrespecting or trash-talking your partner to others, whether behind their back or in their presence. Story 58. Many relationships end because one or more partners are unable or unwilling to communicate. You are an individual first and a partner second. Do not assume what your partner wants. Ask them and do it. Story 59. Never accepting any fault or allowing your partner to never accept faults prevents personal growth. Story 60. When one partner has symptoms that doctors do not take seriously, they may spend years researching to find the cause. When they finally identify it, the other partner still does not believe them. Story 61. When the wife decides that she is a lesbian, that usually ends the marriage. Story 62. Weaponizing communication, the silent treatment. No relationship can survive a lack of communication. It is immature and can cause a fundamental breakdown in the relationship. Story 63. Dumbness. If your partner is just plain dumb, it gets old fast. Add excessive pride, stubbornness, and a refusal to learn basic adult skills, and you become a caretaker for a developmentally stunted adult. I have seen friends struggle with partners like this, and it is never worth it. They will drag you down. Story 64. When they pour the milk from the old gallon into the new one. Story 65. Knowing full well your husband absolutely never wanted children, you lie to him about being able to have kids, become pregnant, and then tell him, "I tricked you into getting me pregnant, we're married, so now you're stuck with me, and everyone will take my side and believe whatever I say because I'm the woman in the relationship. Fuck me and my future and what I wanted in life, I guess. Then everyone tells me it's my fault because I trusted the words of a woman." Story 66. If the other person does not share any of the mental load, don't ask me what's for dinner if you are the one cooking. Don't ask me whether to wash an item or what laundry settings to use. Don't ask what you should do to help. Use your eyes. If you see a lot of white clothing, wash the whites. If you see trash, take it out. If you see food that is almost expired, cook with it. Of course you can ask sometimes, but not all the time. I'm not your mom. Story 67. A lack of healthy communication, including yelling, belittling, disrespect, and name-calling, chips away at the foundation and will eventually cause the entire structure to topple. Story 68. Sleeping without resolving fights, being emotionally distant, making your partner feel unheard, comparing them to others, giving the silent treatment instead of communicating, or slowly losing effort and making them feel like they are the only one trying. Story 69. A few concerns. 1. Mobile phone use. 2. Lack of effort in relationships and in spending time with family. 3. Failure to acknowledge these issues. Story 70. Stealing, lying, doing drugs with your kids. Yeah, I didn't choose well. Story 71. Narcissistic personality disorder is one of the most severe and dangerous mental illnesses. It is frightening and its patterns are twisted, but once you educate yourself, a person with the disorder becomes predictable and ordinary in their behavior. The disorder is very different from simply having narcissistic traits. It has become a buzzword used far too freely. Most people do not understand what they are talking about. Story 72. They never apologize or take responsibility for mistakes. Story 73. She shares every argument with her friends and family and insists she is objectively in the right. She remembers past fights and brings them up repeatedly. She does the bare minimum. She has too many close male friends who hit on her the moment we have a fight. I probably dodged a bullet. Laughing out loud. Story 74. Put the entire financial burden on your partner, and when he needs to work longer hours, demand that he spend time with you. Story 75. When one partner stops showing interest, appreciation, or affection, the other begins to feel invisible. It is not betrayal, but it hurts just as much. Story 76. Keeping score and expecting repayment. As in I did this for you the other day, so you owe me this today, destroys relationships very quickly. Story 77. Letting resentment build unaddressed, without compromise or empathy on either side, is absolute poison in any relationship, especially in a marriage. It is a hard lesson to learn. Story 78. You secretly hope he will figure out why you are upset and make things right, but he does not. You harbor resentments until one day you explode over an unwashed cup, but really over years of unspoken pain. He is shocked because he does not understand why such rage erupts over trivial matters. Story 79. You never participate in making plans. I mean, come on, help me out a little here. Story 80. Disinterest, poor communication, omission of important details, and self-centeredness prevent growing together. Instead, each person continues alone. Story 81. Substance abuse involved many of the same forms of disrespect as cheating. Lying, excuses, last-minute changes to plans, and hiding things. But instead of covering up another person, it was about alcohol. Story 82. Not being able to really say I'm sorry. Saying I'm sorry, but you made me mad is not an apology. Story 83. Lying, manipulative and passive-aggressive behavior, and poor communication. One of those three will poison a relationship. Together they will kill it. It is like weed killer for any kind of relationship, platonic or romantic. The fertile soil in which the relationship started will need a lot of nurturing before it is healthy enough for new growth. Story 84. Spitting on them and calling them a slut for having male friends. Story 85. Many issues emerge while traveling, living together, or meeting a partner's parents. These are good tests for long-term relationships. One example that is not cheating but can still ruin a relationship is discovering that your partner is an alcoholic who cannot stay sober. Story 86. Making jokes about your partner in public is problematic, especially when you do it in front of them. It is one thing to joke in private, but when other people are around, a joke you think is harmless can actually cut deep. Story 87. Addiction to substances such as alcohol, opioids, cocaine, or cannabis, dopamine-driven behaviors such as persistent pornography use despite repeatedly setting boundaries, emotional incompatibility or unavailability, unreliability during crises, and failing to approach the relationship or marriage with reciprocity. Story 88. When communication feels like a fight or when you feel more alone in a relationship. Story 89. As others have said, taking each other for granted and prioritizing anything over your marriage or relationship. Story 90. Liking Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or Facebook posts by people of the opposite gender that are revealing or exotic. Story 91. When your partner says that something you are doing is genuinely annoying them and you make no effort to stop. Story 92. Not communicating your needs and refusing to compromise for the sake of the relationship both build resentment. The first depletes the willingness to compromise in the other. At the beginning, one person squelches their needs and calls it compromise when it is not. Giving someone 100% and getting nothing in return is not compromise. After a long time, they become resentful and start taking back everything, which feels unreasonable to their partner. The tables have turned, but there is still no real negotiation. The first person feels justified because they had been giving everything. Finally, the second person gets fed up and begins to negotiate. It is at this point they learn about each other and find out if they are compatible. This could be anywhere from 5 weeks to 5 months or even 5 years. It is surprising that people manage the most important relationship of their lives this way. All of this happens to avoid a conflict that is actually a healthy discussion in an adult relationship. Story 93. Putting the wants and needs of people outside the relationship ahead of your partner. Story 94. Lack of effort and their constant expectation that you compromise, even though you try to make things work. Story 95. Emotional distance. When you are together but feel completely alone. Story 96. My wife said she would divorce me if I joined United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I would rather be homeless and loved by her than support those fascists. Story 97. Addiction. Not just about drugs. Addiction can involve gaming, masturbation, or collecting things. Obsessions about the things one collects can dominate thoughts and conversations and may cause moodiness. Too much of anything is dangerous, can get out of control. Story 98. Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. Not communicating when you have an issue with something means you think you are keeping the peace, but you are just sabotaging everything. Story 99. Name-calling. Not helping with home care, such as general maintenance and cleaning, if you live together. Not being fair about bills, because fair does not mean equal. Not being able to apologize when you are wrong. Excessive pride and rudeness, and so on. Story 100. When you are married or in a long-term relationship, taking intimacy for granted or assuming your partner does not need it because you do not in that moment can cause problems. This becomes especially true when kids, work, and school get hectic. Intimacy often becomes the last thing someone deals with each day, so they assume it can wait until some undetermined future date. Story 101. When someone starts paying more attention to their phone than to you, it hurts much more than people admit. Story 102. If you are in a good relationship with your partner, it feels great at the beginning. But after 1 year, if you have not had sex during that year, your spark and feelings may fade. Without sexual intimacy, many relationships may not remain long-lasting. In the early phase you enjoy each other, but later you need intimacy to maintain strong feelings and stay close. Story 103. I have a friend who would not leave her boyfriend no matter what he did to her. One day she found an Ona hole in his closet and stopped loving him at that moment. Story 104. When we are feeling off, my partner and I make sure we openly communicate. Story 105. My ex was constantly lying. I caught him many times but foolishly said nothing. The more he lied, the less I wanted to be around him. Story 106. Emotional neglect occurs when one person stops showing genuine interest in the other's thoughts, feelings, or small joys, and it slowly drains the connection. You don't need a big betrayal to lose love. Sometimes it's just silence where effort used to be. Story 107. One of the unspoken roles and rules of marriage is that you have an inherent fiduciary duty to your partner. Marriage is akin to creating a small two-person corporation. Just like any business partnership, one partner must have the other partner's financial well-being in mind. Breaking that fiduciary duty is a serious matter, both legally and emotionally. It is on the same level as infidelity. Taking the nest egg and gambling with it is a breach of fiduciary trust. Shopping every weekend and running up the credit card bills is also a breach. It will end a relationship just as surely as catching a partner cheating. Story 108. A female partner with borderline personality disorder has been destroying the relationship from the inside for years and then blames you anyway. Story 109. Demanding that a partner engage in sexual activity against their will. Story 110. Artificial intelligence or pornography gives unrealistic expectations. This can leave the person performing the act seeking pleasure elsewhere because they cannot get the same feeling from their partner. They may think something is wrong with their relationship, but in the end the act is what caused the problem. Story 111. Emotional neglect, being valued only for sexual favors, and trying to fix mistakes with gifts instead of making real changes. Story 112. Making sex transactional, for example promising sex in exchange for chores, has caused countless relationships to fail. Story 113. Could be any number. Indifference, neglect, abuse, letting oneself go. Sometimes there is nothing but time and the changing of personalities that kill a relationship. Story 114. I swear I have watched 90% of couples on reality television fall apart because of that one thing. When the daily grind turns into a silent war, you are basically killing the romance without even knowing it. Story 115. Masturbating to a picture of your wife's best friend in front of her. Story 116. A lack of respect and communication harms any relationship, not just romantic ones. Story 117. He is so obsessed with video games that he talks about them constantly and spends all his time playing them. Story 118. Lack of respect. Cut out any disrespect immediately. If he or she will not stop, leave. It is over anyway. Story 119. Jealousy and a lack of commitment. She wants me part-time yet does not want anyone else to have me. I have a couple of female friends I have known for 35 years, but trouble starts if I even mention their names in conversation. It is okay for her to have male friends, which contradicts her narrative. Story 120. Cheating is not merely when you are caught sleeping with the neighbor's wife or when she is with the pizza delivery boy. Everybody cheats all the time. Some forms of cheating are more tolerable. You cannot keep objecting to everything. Story 121. Trying to become polyamorous with your girlfriend who has said they are not interested in that. Failing that, assault. In my experience, that will do it. Done for good. Story 122. Avoid being overly judgmental. If you look for flaws, you will find them in everyone because nobody is perfect. Appreciate the positives, be mindful of the negatives, and consider whether you can work around issues as a team or whether there are truly any deal breakers. Story 123. Inequality in a relationship kills the romance. If I feel taken advantage of, it destroys the connection immediately. I am willing to give as long as my partner is also giving, not in a one-sided exchange. Story 124. Taking each other for granted and saying mean things even if you do not mean them. Story 125. Babe, I won't take no. I'm leaving. I don't care what you try to say to keep me here. I'm out. Story 126. Lethal gunfights in the living room and Muay Thai duels to the death on the roof. That sort of thing. Story 127. Not taking care to be attractive to the other person. Story 128. Phrases that are heavy and cannot be erased include I was better without you. Story 129. Lack of intimacy. Any intimacy, not only sexual. I have been working on this with my spouse for 8 years, and I am losing my youth and my health. It hurts so much. Story 130. One person changes their religious preference without telling the other. Story 131. You should have your own life. As a partner, I cannot be your only source of socialization and entertainment. Story 132. There was general disrespect toward each other. I saw it happen with my parents. They fell out of love because they stopped respecting each other as individuals and crossed personal boundaries. The small things can add up. Story 133. Disrespecting the other person, for example, flirting with others in front of them, makes them uncomfortable. Doing that is a real mood killer and feels like a micro-betrayal each time. If you know something makes them unhappy, do not do it in front of them. What you do when they are not there is different, but doing it in front of them is simply not kind. Story 134. Not communicating or resolving problems lets them pile up. Story 135. Complacency. When one person is growing and improving for the relationship while the other remains the same and does not consistently try to improve, it becomes exhausting. Story 136. Lack of appreciation, insufficient reassurance, and lack of intimacy. I do not mean just sexual activity, but the little things like kissing and holding. It is a slow killer of a relationship. Story 137. Lies. Being emotionally distant. Lack of support. Abandonment. Leaving you to take care of everything. Kids, house, him, cars, lawn, trash, bills, and housework. Story 138. I was not being heard. I had specifically asked for that to happen. You were in the room and I had already established your engagement. When that does not happen, I do not owe you an explanation for why I asked. I just needed it. I was also smoking weed and looking up how to file for divorce. Story 139. Staying in your comfort zone and only complying is cheating. Over time, it will make you uncomfortable. Story 140. Talking on the phone all night with coworkers about work. Story 141. Not opening up or discussing deeply rooted feelings or trauma makes caring for a partner's needs and desires difficult. Everyone carries emotional baggage or bad experiences, and having those conversations is challenging, but understanding what your partner has gone through builds a new layer of trust and intimacy. Can be very hard for some people. Story 142. My ex's best friend broke up with his girlfriend, so he could have sex with another woman. He said that if she made a move, he might not be able to say no, and since he knew she was interested, he could have walked away instead. He left his girlfriend, slept with the other woman, and now, after 2 months, is trying to get back together. I would be afraid to be with someone like that because I would not know if he would do the same again. When trust is broken by cheating, you cannot be sure your partner will not cheat again. Story 143. Insecurity followed by blaming the other person. One partner did everything they could to reassure the other and help with the insecurity, but nothing helped, and the insecure partner never sought help. My last relationship ended early because of that. Story 144. There was resentment and a loss of trust and security in the relationship. She threatened to break up with me or seek a divorce whenever she was upset, which made me extremely conflict avoidant to the point of self-abandonment. She resented that I would not fight with her when she yelled, would not stand up for myself, or would not set boundaries. She felt I was being inauthentic. I felt that if I even tried to get her to work with me on a household budget, she would choose divorce rather than curb her stream of consciousness spending. This created resentment on both sides. Story 145. I believe, to sum up, indifference, neglect, and finally emotional detachment. Story 146. Not being truthful to your partner about your life and answering everything with, "I don't remember." Story 147. This has been studied to help and support. Disrespect is the primary cause. Story 148. I think some people value their blood relatives far more than the partner they married. You should love your family, but do not let their opinions rule your relationship. When you marry someone and choose to have children, that becomes your family, and you should commit to them. Story 149. Being overly obsessed with being right and failing to pick battles wisely. Lying. Story 150. Degrading someone's sexual performance during an argument is a psychological weapon. It will really mess with your mind. Story 151. Getting too comfortable in a relationship can be risky. Feeling secure is good because it shows you are at ease with your partner, but if you stop doing the things that made the relationship work, you will start to see cracks. For example, if you used to buy your partner flowers once a month and then stop, you might not notice you have stopped, but 99% of the time your partner will. That is how people end up telling friends their partner used to be loving and attentive but no longer seems to care. Story 152. Draining their bank account without permission and losing it all at a casino. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.